What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me here today, as he is every Tuesday, it's Adam Ronis. Ronis, what's going on, man? How you feeling today? How was the weekend?
The weekend was okay. I'm actually feeling a little sore. Finally threw the softball for the first time on Sunday since August. So, shoulder and the triceps feeling sore, but that's going to happen when you don't throw for that long. Your body's not used to it. And I probably threw for like a good hour and a half straight. So, it was fun to do that. And not the typical Memorial Day weekend. I didn't get to barbecue or any of that. So, weather was pretty good. Could have been a little bit better, but no complaints. Not a bad weekend.
All right, not bad, not bad. There's a lot of stuff going on here in the sports world as we kind of gear up because now here we are, tail end of May. Based on everything that we're hearing, you talk about plans of leagues starting back up in July 4th weekend. We look at that like we as an industry, we're about to get bum rushed. Which, listen, if you're not afraid of a little hard work, well, then you're okay with that. So I want to cover there are four big things going on with each of the main sports, which we all kind of do, and I want to just kind of hit each one today and get your thoughts. Let's start off in your wheelhouse here, Adam, and talk a little NBA because now I'm hearing that what they are talking about is picking back up they're saying like picking back up the season for a couple of warm-up games, then going into a playoff format. But obviously not everybody's that happy. Damian Lillard said, listen, if we're gonna start back up and we're not gonna, the Trailblazers aren't gonna have a legit opportunity to make the playoffs because you've trimmed 15 games off of the 20 game schedule remaining, well then I'm not playing. So does basketball need to take like a little page out of the NHL playbook here and maybe just go directly to the playoffs and run a larger format?
Well, that's been one of the proposals on the table. That's the thing is nothing is really set. I've seen several different scenarios. The one where Lillard is referring to is, I believe there's something where for these teams to get all their TV contract money, they have to play at least 70 games. Every NBA team has played at least 63. Some have played 64, 65. So I think Lillard was responding to that, saying, well, the Blazers are 3.5 games out of the Western Conference final seed, the eighth seed. They've obviously, some people are going to say, well, you had all season to do it and you didn't. Well, they've had injuries. They're 8 games under 500. Lillard missed some time. Yusuf Nurkic was supposed to be back sometime at the end of March. Zach Collins, one of the under centers as well. And no one can deny that if the Blazers are full strength, they could be dangerous. This is a team, that went to the Western Conference Finals last year, and Damian Lillard had some ridiculous games last year. He scored the most points in an NBA game this season with 61. He another the game was 60. I think any NBA fan wants to see Damian Lillard in the playoffs, and if they do stick with the conventional format, if they get in as the 8th seed, the Lakers are not going to want to play Portland with Damian Lillard in the first round. They should be able to win that series, but it will not be easy. So the way I compare Lillard's comments are, it's the same thing as if, it's the end of the year. In every sport, your team's mathematically eliminated. Your star player had an injury. All right, we're going to sit him out now. So Lillard said he'd go, he'd be with the team, but he wouldn't play. And I know everyone's going to be like, he's so selfish. Well, if you're Lillard coming off an injury, you're asked to go to Disney here just to play. For them, it would be 4 games. They've played 66. So you go there to play 4 games where mathematically you probably can't make the playoffs because the only way it would happen is they'd have to, I guess they still could, but if they lose one, they'd be eliminated because they're 4 out in the loss column. So I kind of understand where Lillard is coming from and why he's frustrated. But I've seen other formats where they might just go to the playoffs and seed 1 to 16, regardless of conference. So they would just take the 16 playoff teams and seed them accordingly, which to me that would actually help the Lakers because now the Bucks would have to beat the Clippers and the Lakers to win an NBA championship. And to me, those are the 3 best teams in the NBA. Then, of course, there's play-in games. So nothing has been set in stone. But I think where Lillard was coming from was like, hey, I don't want to come back just to play 70 games and basically we kind of don't have a shot. I'm just going to sit it out. And I know that's not going to sit well with many people. But what's the difference between that and then during the season when your team is mathematically eliminated. All right, well, this star player who is banged up this year is going to sit it out because the games don't mean much. Of course, there's the whole tanking issue, but the NBA has addressed that with a lottery where, just because you're the worst record doesn't mean you get the 1 seed. So, there's several formats here at play, and we just don't know what's going to happen yet. But I would think, the TV money matters, and I would think they would find a way to get to at least 70 games.
I mean, I think, yeah, for the sake of TV money and making sure that locks in, yeah, it definitely makes sense to get every team down there and every team to do that. What's your thoughts here on like, out of all the plans that you've heard? I mean, listen, we go back and forth with MLB on a regular basis, and we've heard 20 different plans thrown against the wall by them. For NBA, like, what's Adam Ronis's ideal situation? Like, are you all about finish the 20 games of the regular season and then jump to the playoffs, or are you more about let's just come up with a clever playoff format where maybe it's not even just the top 16, maybe you go top 20, top 22?
I mean, it all depends, I guess, on the timeline. From a fantasy perspective and a betting perspective, I'd like to finish the regular season. Obviously, it would help us crown our fantasy basketball champions without complicating things. I know, the high stakes leagues for basketball, the NFBKC has said, if they just go straight to the playoffs, whoever's in first in the roto format is going to win. Obviously, in our home leagues where it's head to head, it gets more complicated. So, I mean, ideally, I'd like to see them finish it if they can. I just don't know what the timeline is going to be for that. Because you're talking, for some team, anywhere between 15 and 18 games for certain teams, and then go to the playoffs, which are going to take a month and a half, 2 months. So you're basically adding another month. So can you play July, August, September? Then you'd have what, a 2-month off season? You'd probably start on Christmas, which I know a lot of people have proposed for years, saying the NBA should do that. So that's the only thing that I'm not sure about. How would that work? Of course, remember, you still have to have the NBA draft. So that's the one complicated part when I look at it for completing the regular season. When I look at it, though, like in the Eastern Conference, the teams are pretty much decided. Orlando's got a 5.5 game lead on the Wizards for the A spot. The Wizards are 16 games under 500. I mean, they clearly don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Orlando, as is 5 games under 500 as the A seed. The Nets, as the 7th seed, are 4 games under 500. So the Eastern Conference, I don't see the need to do it. And the West has more of an argument because you got Portland, as I mentioned, with Lillard and getting some help, only 3.5 behind Memphis. The Pelicans also only 3.5. We haven't heard any comments from the Pelicans, and that's a team, that got Zion Williamson. And yeah, they were, 5-5 in their last 10 games. It looked like they were going to make a run, but that's a fun team to watch that has a shot as well. And the Kings are only 3.5 out. So in the Western Conference, you could see it a little bit more. So it really comes down to the timeline, and can they realistically, spend a month on regular season games, which is probably what they would have to do. And it seems like that might be a little bit of a stretch.
It does seem like a little bit of a stretch. Again, if securing the TV rights money is the main focus there, then you have to, to me, it's like, okay, you can treat those as warm-up games, sort of, kind of, into the playoffs, and revamp, like take a page out of the NHL and forget about the bottom feeders of the Eastern Conference. Take those top 8 teams, take the top 8 teams from the Western Conference, and then fill out from 16 teams, build it to 20 teams or 22 teams, however you want to do it. And those teams that are on the bubble in the West, maybe those are the teams who advance to the playoffs. So you take a team like the Wizards, yeah, go ahead, play out your 5 games or your 4 games to secure the TV rights and that money, fine, but we're not going to reward you with a playoff spot there. And for those teams who are fighting for a spot, like the Trailblazers, well, now all of a sudden we're going to say these are your warm-up games to secure TV rights money, but you still got a slot in the playoffs because we've expanded our playoffs a little bit more to kind of, appease everybody, make sure that the stars are all showing their faces here where they should.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said, through all this, you're just never going to have everyone happy with whatever you do. I'm actually fine if they go straight to the playoffs. as much as I would love to see the Blazers or Pelicans get in, they kind of had their opportunity. Again, it's not like we played 20 games, 30 games. Blazers played 66, and everyone deals with injuries. So I understand Lillard's stance, though, because he felt like, hey, if we played a regular season like we were supposed to, this team has a shot to get in. They also did benefit from the layoff because there was no guarantee that Nurkic and Collins would be back, and now they get the extra 2 months. That doesn't happen in the regular season. We don't know when those guys are going to be back. So, I felt this whole time they probably would go straight to the playoffs. Then the question becomes, do you seed 1 through 16, which I was looking at the matchups. It would be really interesting. It would make the first round a lot more appealing because usually the first round of the NBA playoffs are not that exciting, especially in the Eastern Conference. Right now it's Bucks Magic, no appeal there. Raptors Nets, no appeal there because Durant's probably not coming back. Celtics Sixers would be good. Heat Pacers would be good. I think the West obviously would have some good matchups, but if you do seed it 1 to 16, it definitely would make it a lot more interesting. I mean, I think you would have Celtics Sixers in the first round. That'd be a good game. So I think it would make the first round a lot more appealing. And I'm pretty sure LeBron James is pushing for that because if you're LeBron James and they do if they don't reseed, he only has to beat one of the Bucks or Clippers. Whereas now, if they go to conventional, he's got to beat the Clippers to get to the finals, and then probably beat the Bucks if they make it. So I think the path of the 1 to 16 seeding all the teams between the conferences would actually be beneficial to the Lakers.
It definitely would. It definitely would. Jim Bowden would be very happy with that, right? Oh God,
LeBron James haters would not, and there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah, there certainly are. Well, let's talk about in the spirit of you can't satisfy everybody, you can't make everybody happy. Let's look at what the NHL is doing. They've gone to a 24 playoff team format, and they've ousted the bottom 3 from the Eastern Conference because there's actually the Eastern Conference has fewer teams than the Western Conference does. So they're getting rid of the bottom 3 from the Eastern Conference and the bottom 4 teams from the Western Conference, and or maybe it's the reverse. Either way, that's what's going on. And you're looking at now, but they're maintaining the East versus the West. The top 4 teams in the East all get a bye, and then the other teams they end up playing in. The 12 teams play their little tournament, their first round. Then the top 4 teams get seeded in there, and they do that on both sides. Now, listen, I thought it was a fantastic idea. I thought it was great. People sitting there now, obviously complaining like a bunch of crybabies. Because their favorite teams aren't necessarily making it. And when you expand to a 24-team playoff format, the Blackhawks and the Canadians get in. And you know what? As a fan of just the NHL, I mean, listen, I'm a Rangers fan. Rangers sneak in at that last seed there in the Eastern Conference. Okay, that's great. And, hopefully they win and they advance. But, when you look at it and you say, well, why do you got to have to get the Canadians or the Blackhawks in there? It's a media market. It's a major media market. Do I give a crap about, like you want to talk about a major media market that's going to get shafted there? The Kings, the Ducks, they're all out. They would be out. So would, the Arizona Coyotes would be out, and the San Jose Sharks. So you're losing 3 California teams and the 1 Arizona team. But I mean, in order to get an original 6 team like the Blackhawks in there who have won a cup in recent years, I mean, a little bit more recently than, say, some of these other teams that are being ousted, I don't see an issue with that. I mean, traditional to get the Habs in there, I think that's something that you kind of have to do, but people are still finding ways to complain about it. It drives me absolutely insane. You're a hockey playoff guy. You love watching the NHL playoffs. You've said it. I do too. Your thoughts on how this makes up?
I mean, I'm okay with it. Hockey, I think, is different than basketball. I mean, we usually see in basketball, the top teams usually advance to the finals. We've seen 8 seeds before, but it's very rare. It's usually 1, 2, or 3 seeds. NHL is completely different because a hot goalie can carry you. So I can see some of the top teams being a little concerned because one of these teams gets in that maybe didn't have a great regular season, all of a sudden gets hot, and they win a cup. I mean, If you battle the whole season, and I know it's happened before, but then you're expanding it even more. So I could see it, but I also see the other side with more teams involved, and the NHL has to do something, I guess, a little bit different. As much as the game is great for fantasy, for playoffs, it still doesn't have the appeal and coverage and interest of the other three major sports. It's just a fact. And they're still going to have to compete now with NBA, MLB going on during their postseason. So it is going to be tough. So I don't really have a problem with it, but I could see a team at the bottom getting really hot and making a deep run, and it's going to piss fans of the top teams off.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, piss them off. Yeah, just be thankful you're getting hockey back. Like, here's the funny thing is that you've got the NBA fighting about what they're going to do. You've got the MLB fighting about what they're going to end up doing. And they're back and forth and they're back and forth. They're throwing 20 different plans. It's going to end up being like some 11th hour kind of an agreement. And there's the NHL. They're like, this is a piece of cake. This is how we're going to do it. This is what's going to happen. Can't please everybody. You can't make everybody happy, but this is we're just happy to have hockey return. And I think that's, that to me, that's a testament to the league itself. Obviously, yes, it's on the lower echelon of money making in comparison, but they're more, it just seems to me like the NHL is more into getting hockey back on the ice as opposed to, oh, well, I'm not getting paid this, and this guy's not getting that, and this guy's not getting this. It seems like a lot of backbiting.
I think the NBA wants to get there too. There's been polls of players, and they all want to play. I think at this point, again, they're talking about having it in one area in Disney, so there's a lot of logical things to sort out. So I don't think it's people complaining about the format. I mean, I know Lillard spoke out specifically about that one, but I think the NBA definitely wants to get back as well. It seems baseball is the one that's kind of, at least on the reports, bickering over money, although I still think that they eventually come to a deal. I think they have to realize how bad it would look for them, the optics, if they did not play in this pandemic and in this environment due to money. It's just going to turn a ton of people off.
It's going to turn a ton of people off. One of the topics that we're going to be talking about later on tonight on the Fantasy Alarm Roundtable on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio is, one of the big problems that we're seeing right now with MLB as far as, you're already losing fans as it is. Now, all of a sudden, to see players and owners all haggling over money and who's getting what makes it a little difficult. But listen, Rob Manfred has a very strong track record of getting that, that final deal done and making it happen. So rather than talk about what MLB is going to do, let's talk about the fact that we have a pretty good idea of where we're at. They're going to fight over the money, and that's going to be intriguing in its own right. But it does seem like everybody seems to be on board with an 82-game schedule, this divisional realignment where they're just merging the East with the East and the West with the West and the Central with the Central, and going to a universal DH. My question to you, Adam Ronis, strategies. Like, what is this going to do to your overall draft strategy? I know that early rounds are all best player available, and you want to make that happen, but I mean, God, when you look at, the value, devaluing of starting pitching, and now all of a sudden, which hitters in the National League become more appealing strictly because now they could DH. Like, how are you approaching all of this?
Yeah, I do think that the starting pitcher values go down, especially early on if they're not going 5 innings to get a win. You might see some 4-inning outings from your pitchers. I also think managers will have a quick hook. So I think starting pitching will get pushed down, and I think it's more important to get bats that play every day. We're going to see more platoons probably, especially with the expanded rosters. Teams like the Rays and Dodgers, they love those platoons. So you want to get guys that are going to play every day. I think it's even more important. And yeah, a lot of the guys that go in the first 5-6 rounds, but it means maybe some guys in the middle rounds pushing them up. You're going to look at the schedule a little bit more. To me, this team is surprising. I think everyone considered them one of the best teams in baseball offensively, That's the Minnesota Twins. Howard, can you guess who is the highest Twin as far as ADP on offense in the NFBC right now? Who would be your guess?
Highest Twin on the NFBC for the
Offensive player.
offensive player. I would probably say it's like Eddie Rosario, maybe.
It's Nelson Cruz at 74. How does a
Oh,
team like the Twins, as good as they are, they don't have an offensive player in the top 50? I mean, Donaldson's like 93. Now, when you look at the division alignment, they get to play the Royals and Tigers for about 30% of their games, assuming they play the division 13 times, which is 52, right? And then you play 6 games against the Central and the National League, which is 30 games. So that's 82, doing my math. So you're going to get 28 games, 26, 28 games against the Tigers and the Royals. You know, White Sox pitching not great. Indians have some good pitching. And then NL Central, there's decent pitchers. Pittsburgh, as bad as they are, Musgrove and Keller. But it's not a division where you're like, oh, I'm worried about the pitching. So I think the Twins should be pushed up the board. I mean, this is a great offense, and we don't have any of their players going very high in drafts. I don't know why. Like, Cruz, obviously, only eligible utility, and he's older, but we've been going through this every single year. I feel like I've written this article like 5 years in a row with Nelson Cruz, same as David Ortiz. Donaldson's like near 100. Why is Donaldson so low? He stayed healthy last year. Yeah, he's changing leagues, but, he's a big-time bat. So I just feel like a lot of these guys on the Twins are undervalued, so I'd push them up. So I think the Central divisions offensively, I think, benefit a little bit. And the AL East, obviously, Yankees and Rays, getting to face more of the terrible Orioles pitching. Toronto, which is shaky. Even Boston doesn't have the pitching people think anymore, man.
no, they don't.
Outside of Eduardo Rodriguez and who's their other good arm that I'm forgetting?
You can pretty much just stop there at Eduardo Rodriguez.
They have another decent arm. I don't know why I'm forgetting him. It's not
because he's really not that decent. What are you going to say, Eovaldi?
Yeah,
Martin Perez?
He sucks. But yeah, I mean,
Colin McHugh?
No. Yeah,
Ryan Weber?
No.
Brian Johnson?
I guess it's Eovaldi, and even that's shaky because of his health. But yeah, I mean, that's a division with a lot of bad pitching. So it's like hard to push up the Yankees any further because they all go high. Right. The Rays, the problem is the platoons, but you need guys that play every day. These platoons are going to be a major problem. And again, the Rays and Dodgers are two teams that come to mind that are going to really use the platoon. Outside of Austin Meadows, maybe Willie Adames, I mean, you can't deal with these platoons in an 82-game season. So you need to get guys that are going to play every day. The other thing about the Central that I looked at is between the National League and the American League, not a lot of left-handed pitching. So that bodes well for, your Kyle Schwarbers, maybe you're the Reds. You're looking at the left-handed bats there. So, yeah, you kind of just need to put everything under a microscope. And it's not going to shift things drastically, but it is, it could lean in a certain direction. And the other thing that you have to look at, I think, is you might want to go a little bit earlier on your closers. During a 162-game season, we know there's going to be turnover. We know we can find someone. We don't have that time now. I mean, that week one, someone takes over as closer. People are going to spend 70 to 80% of their fab because, it's going to be hard to get a closer. And we just might not see the constant turnover. So, maybe not get Hader, Chapman, Yates, but that Ken Giles range, I might reach up and try and get at least two of those guys. Because we don't have much time to wait anymore. No stashes either. Can't wait on players. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be wild because, we usually do preach patience in baseball because it's a 6-month season. Can't do it this year. I mean, you're going to have to act quick. Fab's going to be wild. And this is definitely the year you want daily transactions, man. If you're in weekly, you're going to be falling behind. I mean, the most important thing, and I know it sounds obvious, you got to accumulate at bats, man. So these guys that platoon got to get knocked down a little bit.
I don't know if I should be scared or if I should be elated by the fact that you and I seem to be very much in lockstep when it comes to strategizing for this season. It almost sounds like you just recited the last 4 articles I wrote in the New York Post. Because I actually covered each one of these things, the value of closers, the Central Division, and really where you want to look. You were talking about the Twins. My immediate thought has been the Reds because I'm like, man, it's Great American Ballpark. You're facing the Twins. I mean, not the Twins, the Tigers. You're facing the Royals. Not to mention, you still have the Pirates. I don't love the pitching for the Milwaukee Brewers. You're also dealing with better hitters ballparks and Miller Park and Great American Small Park. Those obviously being in play. So, I mean, we're very much like-minded in the way we're doing it. And I was actually going to talk about the fact that it is a sprint. It's not a marathon in my next piece, because that's really that's the attention you're going to have to go. So great points all around. Absolutely love that. Let's cap everything off here today with one quick football question, because this was a debate that Jim Bowden and I had on yesterday's Fantasy Alarm Show. Curious as to, your thoughts here. You take a look at the Chargers, you take a look at the Dolphins. I put Jim in a what if scenario. What if Justin Herbert was the starting quarterback from day one? What if Tua is the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins? What does that do to those two teams? Does it turn you off from certain players? Does it turn you on more to certain teams and players?
I don't think it would change drastically. Devontae Parker, though, had his success with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I know Preston Williams went down, and that's when Parker's numbers went up. But a lot of it was with Fitzpatrick, too. So maybe that's a slight concern for Parker if Tua is in there. I think Tua, it comes down to health. I think Miami could be an interesting team. They were very competitive in the second half. I think you got to make sure Tua is healthy. You don't want to risk it. This guy's been banged up. He's your future. We know Fitzpatrick can play at times. He can also turn it over a ton. I'd expect them to start with Fitzpatrick and see what happens. And obviously, if he has that 5-interception game and you think Tua is all right, you could turn it over him. Chargers are very interesting because I think they have good players. I mean, I think the pieces are there. They got a solid running game. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. They improved the offensive line. They have a good defense. We've seen Tyrod Taylor have success before, kind of just manage the game. It seems like they're intent on starting him. I think Herbert's further away. I think it's going to take him some time. So I would expect them to go with Taylor to start the year. I'm still worried about the Chargers players. I've been basically staying away from them. As good as Keenan Allen is, and he's a great route runner, he's very dependent on volume. And I just don't see either quarterback being able to move the offense as Phillip Rivers did. Even though Rivers wasn't great last year, he turned it over a lot. He still was able to move that offense down the field. So if Allen doesn't have the volume he's had recent years, and he's never been a big touchdown guy, there's too many receivers in that area that I like better. So I've been passing on Allen. I love Mike Williams. He just doesn't get the targets that he needs. I mean, he was a beast last year, over 20 yards per reception. Herbert might be a guy that actually helps him pushing it downfield. But I like him more in best ball. I really haven't taken him in redraft leagues yet. Henry, again, I haven't really taken him in the range where he's going. So I've kind of been avoiding the Chargers. I've been taking Preston Williams a lot because he's going in the double-digit rounds. I like Gesicki. I haven't taken Devontae Parker yet. I've always been a huge Devontae Parker fan. Feels like he's kind of one of those players that's divisive. I kind of lean him being on the better side, that he'll do what he did last year or come close. Now, he does have a very, very tough matchups of cornerbacks, if you look at that. And we saw last year Odell Beckham faced that and struggled. But Parker also did have some good games against some top corners last year. I think he had a really good game against Gilmore, Tre'Davious White. So those are two teams, though, that I guess I've delved in more on Miami. Matt Breida, if he falls, 9th round, I'll take him in a PPR. I've even taken Jordan Howard, and I don't love him, but he's going in the 9th round. So it is a running back that should get 200-plus carries. So I think Fitzpatrick starts the year with Miami.
I think Fitz starts, and I think that that Tyrod Taylor starts as well. This was more in the realm of, Tua with the injuries and what his weapons are around him in Miami versus the weapons that are around for Justin Herbert style of offense that Anthony Lynn runs over there. Like, would that be? Because for me personally, I lean towards Herbert and the Chargers. I like the weapons better. I like the secure ground game to fall back on. You got a great pass catcher. in Austin Eckler. You've got a good wide-bodied tight end with good hands in Hunter Henry, which is where the kids kind of lean on. But, it's like funny. You take these two players, not so much in a vacuum, but from just a pure talent standpoint, Tua over Herbert for me, 100%. But now when you're saying Tua coming off the injury, working with the Dolphins and their weapons versus Herbert working with the Chargers and his weapons, that I tilted the other way. Jim tilted more towards Miami, though.
Yeah, I do think the Chargers have the better overall weapons, but I don't think it's awful for Miami either. Again, Preston Williams was playing well. We'll see how he rebounds from the ACL. Gesicki, very athletic. I know he hasn't kind of really produced yet. And, Parker, I know he struggled his first 4 years, 9 touchdowns in his first 4 years, and then he had 9 last year. The talent's always been there. Let's not forget he had to deal with Adam Gase. I mean, we've seen a ton of players under Gase leave and then all of a sudden, explode. So you have to take that into account. And also probably the division, AFC East is worse too than the AFC West, I think. So, and I think Herbert's not ready either. I think that's why they're leaning towards Taylor to begin the year.
All right. Well, there you go. A little bit of basketball, a little bit of hockey, a little bit of baseball, and a little bit of football. Mixing it all up. Sports are coming back sooner than later now, and we're all keeping a very optimistic view on everything as it's happening here. That's going to do it for us here at Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk, part of Fantasy Alarm's TV network. For Adam Ronis, I'm Howard Bender. Big thanks to Matt Sells, our producer. We'll catch you next time.